You watch my videos and don't subscribe. I feel very sad when this happens. Serious former gang members of Reddit, what was it like being in a gang? How were you initiated, and what kind of things did you see and do? I was kicked out of the house by my parents at 17, so I joined a gang. I got jumped in for 77 seconds by 7 guys because I was from Eastside 7 block Peru Bloods. I'm no longer a member. Now I'm a 33-year-old accountant. I joined the Air Force at 19 to get away from the lifestyle and avoid some minor charges. I wasn't in danger by leaving, no. That's a slight misconception. I mean, I'm definitely not allowed back on the block. That's for sure. But it isn't like anyone is going to come hunt me down either. Joining the AF to stay out of trouble didn't really work, though. I mean, it did for about 14 months, but I was constantly in minor trouble. I failed drug tests and didn't show up for work on time a lot. When I got into a fist fight outside of the NCO club with a senior master sergeant, it was over. Luckily, the SMS duty was drunk and making a female airman uncomfortable. So, he ended up writing me a letter of recommendation for my discharge, got me bumped up from a dishonorable to a general. So then, I was out of the Air Force and living in Tucson, Arizona, over 1,000 miles away from anyone I knew. So I joined a graffiti crew. I've graphed since I was a kid, so it just made sense. CSUK. Can't Stop Us crew. This crew wasn't as regimented as my prior gang, but it was another gang, nonetheless. It was in this gang where I developed my cocaine addiction. Don't get high off your own supply, we say. Well, I did. I've been clean for 8 years on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, but back then it was rough. Definitely nothing nice. The worst thing I ever did, that I regret the most, was that my buddy Dricho, pronounced Draco, was shot and killed during a drive-by at a house party. I waited with him for a few minutes, and I knew it was not looking good. After a few minutes, we heard sirens. I didn't know if it was police or ambulance or what. But I took off running. I left my buddy Dricho dying in some stranger's living room just to save my ass. I probably wasn't even facing more than a few small charges either. But I ran. I don't know if Dricho would have made it if I stayed. I doubt it. He was hit twice in the torso and losing a ton of blood. But the fact that I was so scared of some minor disorderly conduct and possession charges that I left my buddy dying. I dunno, man. I'll never forget the moment I made the choice to run for as long as I live. It haunts me to this day. The number one common misconception is that we are all a bunch of knuckleheads. Unintelligent, uneducated, etc. I'm a very smart individual, IQ wise. Book wise too. I didn't join a gang because I was an idiot looking to steal and rob and kill. I joined a gang because to be accepted was better than being alone. I was completely alone and had nothing and no one. This is the case with a lot of my old friends. Sure, some of them are just idiots and assholes. But some of them are really good people that for one reason or another joined a gang. Sometimes we just need a break to get on our feet. Sometimes the gang provides that break, but more often than not, it just drags you down with it. There are common perceptions that are true, though. I made most of my money by selling drugs or robbing people. We'd ride buses through town and wait for a mark or two to get on. We'd watch when they got off and then get off at the same stop. Soon as you get a clearing in traffic, that's it. Take their cell phones, jewelry, money, yes, even their shoes sometimes, if you can make money on them. My little brother, he's incredible at bus stop robberies. And he's actually a brilliant thief, in general. He used to have drawers full of cell phones and pages and even various electronics from breaking into vehicles, GPS, CB radios, and things of that sort. He's also 27, and he's been in jail more since he was 15 than he's been out. My littlest brother could be the answer to number 3, just as well. He is 6 years younger than me and just always wanted to be like his big brother. I really let him down. I feel so bad for it. I know that ultimately my brother makes his own choices, but I still feel like a huge and total douchebag for him having to see me grow up and thinking it was some sort of example for how to do it. It isn't any sort of example at all. Any other questions? Let me know. I tell people I know today that I was a completely different person when I was younger. Sometimes even I can't believe that I was ever involved in gang life. Keep in mind this was well over a decade ago. I was in a mixed race gang, however the majority were Hispanic. It started as a group of friends needing protection from other gangs, but progressed into just plain old criminal behavior. It was exciting to run from cops, cause trouble and occasionally dodge bullets, but really to a bunch of poor and poorly educated kids, to be part of something bigger than ourselves with a feeling of family. It felt good. Getting in was getting ranked in by getting your ass kicked for 30 seconds by whoever was already in the gang and wanted to participate. The time, which was usually between 5 to 10 members vs 1. Most days were spent getting high, cruising lowriders around looking for hints, or slanging dope, or looking to hit a lick, or starting shit with rivals, but mostly just chilling. A life of crime though has consequence, so rap sheets got long and jail was just another place to go. It was also a dangerous life though, lots of injuries and too many deaths of some of my closest friends. But after my best friend was murdered and my son was born, I made a change. I didn't find Jesus or any religion. I found logic and reason, moved far away from all the bullshit. I still keep in contact with 1 or 2 of my old homeboys, but most of them are dead in jail or strung out. Gang life is bullshit, but when you're poor and defenseless sometimes it's just the way it is. I joined a gang when I was 14. We were considered shorties to the actual big bad gang in East Chicago, with a chance to be jumped in and marked a tattoo on your right calf at 16. Basically we were a bunch of y2mates. There were a couple big shit older kids who were our mentors, my big brother among them, but for the most part it was a bunch of 12, 13, and 14 years olds playing at badasses. But it gave me what I needed during that time: camaraderie. My family had just moved out of the projects of Gary, Indiana, as a half-white/half Puerto Rican who looked all white. That was not fun at all, and to a little neighborhood right outside of Gary. I had no friends, we were still incredibly poor, and to top it off, my father had just been diagnosed with lung cancer. My other major male role model, my grandfather, was confined to a chair in our living room, slowly dying of depression and a rising number of strokes. Life sucked. The gang changed that for a little while. I had friends again. After 2.5 years of every peer around me treating me with contempt because of the color of my skin, even the one kid I considered a friend treated me like shit when other people were around. Having friends, being part of a group, I'd have done any amount of shitty gang banging for that feeling. It didn't matter that I had very little in common with any of these people besides the fact that we were all poor. We did some bad things, broke into a few houses, and beat the living hell out of one poor bastard for betraying our trust, and that summer ended with me doing a 2-month-long stint in the Lake County Juvenile Center, which made living in the projects seem like a wet dream. But for the most part we just hung out together and acted like kids who were trying to act like they were too mature to act like kids. We'd smoke cigarettes thanks to a 19-year-old member of the gang who was my best friend at the time, but looking back, he was a complete and utter loser. Talk about banging chicks. Talk about kicking the asses of rival gang members or the asshole jocks at school. Talk about how badass we'd be when we got to join the real gang in a couple years. In hindsight I realize we were all just ghetto nerds who had banded together for the sake of banding together. It was a brotherhood that I didn't know I desperately needed until I had it. They were there at my father's funeral. They were there at my grandfather's funeral. They were there, basically. I come from the hood. My mom was in a gang back in the 60s and that's where she met my dad. They were in the y2mate. Apparently that had to do with death. I never asked them if they murdered anyone, but I hope not. Anyways, I grew up hoping to join a gang. I was young and stupid. I joined the crackers mainly because my friends did. The classic monkey see monkey do scenario. I've been jailed 3 times for battery and was too afraid to quit for 4 years. Finally quit the cracker packers last year. Feels liberating. I was in one of the groups during the period linked above. I was initiated by basically going to work for them. Our little subgroup was run by a Vietnamese dude. Most guys made money from growing weed, smuggling weed, running phones delivery line for crack, heroin and powdered coke. Usually these workers would sell weed on their own at the same time. I had grow houses, worked a phone for a while. I also used to find people who were social butterflies and get them to sell stuff for me. Like if somebody had a little weed dealing business, I'd force them to buy wholesale off me. If they weren't affiliated with anybody, I'd also try to get them selling blow and E, since their customer base usually wanted those, cheaper and better quality than they were paying usually, so often I didn't need to threaten them. It was an interesting time in my life. Sometimes if a guy would get into a fight at a club, I'd get a call at like 1 AM to go get his back, and we'd have like 100 guys show up to put the boots to a group of maybe 10 guys who were starting shit. For a young guy it was honestly awe-inspiring. You get into a fight with some cocky douchebags at a club, and with a couple phone calls you have a bunch of dudes arriving in luxury cars to get your back. Most of the guys in those days came from nice middle class homes, so when the cops really started cracking down hard on gang activity, lots of guys just got jobs or moved out to the Vancouver area to grow weed. I work in the legal end of the commercial medical cannabis industry now, so luckily some of my skills transferred over. Lots of guys ended up in the oil patch. For some reason many became car salesmen. I was 80 East Side Skyline Peru, one of the original sets that made up the Bloods. I joined up when I was 13. Got jumped in by 5 for 30 seconds then given my flag. I did the usual gangbanged, jumped people, robbed people, shot people, fked hoes, sold dope. Became somewhat known because I was Middle Eastern and not black, so people took notice. At first it was cool, but then I noticed I caught the wrong people's attention for the wrong reasons. I was active up until I was 21, almost at YOG status. I stopped because I moved every few years and everywhere I went I noticed Bloods and Crips, and every city had different knowledge gang history you're taught prior to initiation. For instance on the West Coast it's more of a block thing, everyone knows the big homie, so if you claim you're part of a set and people approach that set's big homie and he don't know you, that's your ass. On the East Coast it's UBN, United Blood Nation, and it's ran like the mob rather than Oxyogig and BG. They have bosses and cappers. UBN knowledge starts with how the Millers made a New York City connection, and the 9 Tree set was started in the 90s, completely different from what I was told. When I went to the South I seen that the Crips had gangster disciple knowledge and Bloods had vice lord knowledge, and most of their sets were non-existent in the West Coast. The gang shit is hella flimsy. I left that life alone, and I have a family now and own my own businesses. But sometimes these young BTCH made motherfuckers step up, and I have to let them know who the FK they are talking to. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments under the video, write what you think about all this. And also do not forget to watch our other videos. Bye.